James isn't here today. He preaches up, I don't know if it's too loud or not. He preaches up there, but I have to have something to hide behind, and as well as something to put my notes on. But anyway, he went to Arizona with his son to visit a friend. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about is old age. And I feel quite qualified to talk about it. I've read about it, and now that I am old, anyway, it's kind of a fleeting thing. And when in the 60s, everybody that was over 30 was considered old. And as those guys that got over 30 that were making fun of the guys that were 30 got older, that it kind of went on out. The other indication that you're old is you can get McDonald's gives you a discount at 55. You can get a senior coffee then. And my wife and I kind of started realizing when we were getting old a long time ago, our daughter was playing basketball in high school, and we'd go see the games, and one of the fellow spectators was there and said, it's really a good thing, a nice thing that you come and see your granddaughter play so often. So anyway, but I didn't reach the definition of being old, because in 1 Kings 1:1 it says King David was old and well advanced in years. And it doesn't say how old he was, but if you add up when he became king and add how long he was in king in each place, you find out that he died at 70 years old. So, and then in Psalms 90, verse 10, it says that the days of man is 70, and that he can live long by strength to 80, which is 80. So the about 70 is where they put it. I read an article a long time ago. It was in one of the magazines that promoted a lot of evolution stuff, and it was on longevity, and it said one of the interesting things that really struck me. I read this back when I was probably in my 20s, but it said that the cells that you have divide kind of in a normal way until you get to about 70, and then it made the statement as if they were programmed to quit producing like they were. And I thought, it went right along with the Bible, but they had no idea what they were saying on the thing. Well, you think, how did it happen? How did you get so old? And you think it just came on all of a sudden. But if you look at the Bible, and you can see a few examples of how that happened. In Genesis 47:7 through 10, Jacob gets asked how old he was, and this is the time when his son Joseph brought him into Egypt because of the big famine that was there in the promised land where he was, and he brings him in there, and he introduces him to Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh asked him, he must look kind of old, because Pharaoh asked him how old he was. He goes, then Joseph brought in Jacob, his father, and stood him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, how many are the days and years of your life? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days and years of my sojourn, 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of my years of my life. They have not attained the days of the years of the life of my fathers and the days of their sojourning. So, here's Jacob. He's 130 years old, and he thinks it's passed by pretty quickly. In James 4:14, it says that man's life is like a vapor. It's like in this translation it says it's like a mist. But we're just here a while and then we're gone. So what's the big fear of getting old? Well, the big fear, as everybody knows, is that is death's approaching. And it's something that's very much denied in our present culture. Before medicine was so good and they had antibiotics and stuff, there was, every family was touched more often by death. Children died at a pretty young age often. The other thing is that women died in childbirth. And at one time, the men lived a lot longer than the women, but if you go to the nursing home today, you'll see that there'll be like 2 guys to 20 women in the nursing home. So they live a lot. That's just an observation that I've made. But it's denied, and you look at all the stuff that they sell and all the push to make you look younger, and apparently it sells pretty good. What do you got? You got the makeup, you got the vitamins that they give, they got the exercise, they got hair dye, they got lipstick, they got everything that you do to make people look younger. Not to make anybody feel bad, but it's plastic surgery. It just goes on and on this industry. And it struck me that it's just how fleeting things are. I went to a college reunion 2 years ago, and I was there, and there was, not everybody goes to those things, but it was a 50-year reunion, so most of it had been around quite a while. But then they put it up on a screen, and it was one of those scrolling things of all the people that had passed on in our class. Well, I graduated in 1970, and probably a third of them had already passed on. It was just shocking to me. But so we know it's coming, and the problem is, where the fear comes. One guy said it, and I thought this was a good statement. He says, people don't have a problem. I don't know who this quote comes from, and I'm going to mess it up anyway, but he said, people don't have a problem deciding between heaven or hell, but they do have a problem deciding between heaven and this world. We're comfortable here, and it's hard to think that we're going to give up what we have and where we are right at the moment. But there's those 2 areas there. We know our fate, we know we're leaving, and we live in a world of goodbyes right now. But people are moving on, and we're that's just where we are, and that's just where we headed. And it comes on. Everybody today is a day older than they were yesterday, and pretty soon they get stacked up. And you'll be as old as I am pretty soon. So if you look at, I just want to look at a couple of people that the Lord had kind of at the time that they were about to pass on. He honored them with certain things. And first of all, I'm going to look at Moses. And it's in Deuteronomy 34, 1 through 8. And I don't think I got that one marked, so just a minute. But anyway, Moses, okay, so here's Moses. He had lived his life, and he'd been taken. The Lord had appointed him to take the children, to get the children out of Egypt, and to lead them into the Promised Land. And he did what he needed to do. He had a tough job, and he had people complaining all the time, and they were even going to kill him sometime, but he persisted. But he messed up at one point where the Lord told him to speak to a rock, and he struck it, and he didn't do what the Lord said, and the Lord was disappointed with him. So the Lord said, that you're not going to be able to go into the land that you're off to. But the Lord, if you look at what the Lord does for him, he takes him up to Mount Nebo. And we went to Israel once, and Mount Nebo is a big old mountain on one side of the Jordan, and we didn't go to the top of it, but you could see where it was, and you could see, the whole plain there of where the Dead Sea was, and a lot of where the land of Israel is. But the Lord took him up there, and when Moses went up, this is verse 1, from the plains of Moab to the Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite Jericho, and the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead, as far as Dan and Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, and all the land of Judah, as far as the western sea, and the Negev, and the plain that is the valley of Jericho, and the city and the palm trees, and as far as Zoar. And the Lord said to him, this is the land which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, and I will give it to your offspring. I have let you see it with your own eyes, but you shall not go over there. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. So there's Moses. The Lord honored him. He let him see the land. He was about to go, but he let him see it, and I'm sure it was a fulfilling thing with him. And there's a couple other examples. If you look in Luke, the 2nd chapter, you see there's a guy in the temple, and he's an old fella. And I thought I had these marked better than I did, but I don't. But anyway, it's in Luke 2nd chapter. So anyway, guy's named Simeon, and in verse 22 of Luke 2, it says, and when the time came for their purification, according to the law of Moses, they brought him up to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As is written in the law, every male who first opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. So you had to redeem the firstborn male, and so you did that with a sacrifice. So Joseph and Mary had brought up Jesus to redeem him. And so it says, and they offered sacrifice according to what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Now there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon, and this man was a righteous and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel. That's Jesus. And the Holy Spirit was upon him, and it had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not see death before he had seen the Lord's Christ. And he came in the Spirit into the temple, and when the parents brought the child Jesus to do for him according to the custom of the law, he took him up in his arms and blessed God and said, Lord, now you are letting your servant depart in peace, according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, that you have prepared in the presence of the people a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for the glory to your people, Israel. So here he is. Here's a guy, that had the Lord's business on his mind. He was old, and he wanted to see, the salvation of mankind in person before he departed, and the Lord granted that to him. So, and then Anna's another one in the same place that she's in the temple all the time. She's been a widow for years. She's 84 years old, and she sees him. And the Lord lets her see Jesus also. But think about it. I mean, here are these people. They devoted themselves to the Lord. They have a goal, and the Lord honors that. And I think that's a lesson for us, that if we want to be about the Lord's business, we ought to set some goals that we want to accomplish, and that we I think the Lord will help us do those things. So you think, well, why did Moses have to go up there and see the land of Israel? But it was important to him, and it was important to God that he did it. And he was going to go on. He comes, you see Moses again on the Mount of Transfiguration coming back. So, we know Moses is in a good spot, but the Lord honored that, and I think that's important for us to take note of that. All right, so we need to have some goals and some purpose before we come out. But now we're going to talk about that there's good news in the Bible and there's bad news in the Bible. And first I want to talk about the bad news. I think we all know what it is. So we know our fate, and we know we're going to die. And we know that we were made in the image of God, so we have an eternal soul, and that and we know that this earthly death that we're going to face is just one of the deaths, and it talks about a second death that you don't want to have any part of. So we have this immortal part of our body, that our being, our body's going to deteriorate and be gone, but there's an immortal part of us, and it's going to live on forever. And it talks in the Bible, and it talks in Revelation 20 of the second death, and we don't want to have any part to do with the second death. And what's happened to us is, and we read about it in Genesis, that sin came into the world, and we've all taken part in that sin, and so we're all separated, or have been separated from the love of God, and we're all heading for the second death, if it wasn't for the good news that Jesus came and offers us salvation. And Romans talks about this in a pretty good way in chapter 6. And what it talks about, first of all, is that sin came into the world through one man, but sin also is going to be is taken out of the world by one man. And what in Romans, what who's he talking to? He's talking to people that don't believe in the resurrection, or that are doubting the resurrection. And he's trying to explain to them that there is a resurrection, and that if you don't believe in the resurrection, then you're, especially as a Christian, that you're the most miserable of all. He says you're most to be pitied is what he says. But let's just go over Romans. You might not have follow along in that one, because I'm going to read a little bit more in that. But it's chapter 5 and 6 we're going to look at. Okay, and then, so in verse 5:12, he says, therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sin. For sin indeed was in the world before the law was given, but sin is not counted where there is no law. Yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those whose sinning was not like the transgression of Adam, who was a type of the one who was to come. But the free gift is not like the trespass. For if many died through one man's trespass, much more have the grace of God and the free gift of grace, in that one man, Jesus Christ, abound for many. And the free gift is not like the result of that one man's sin. For the judgment following one trespass brought the condemnation, but the free gift following many transgressions brought justification. If because of one man's trespass death reigned through that one man, much more those who receive the abundance and grace and the free gift of righteousness reign in life through the one man, Jesus Christ. So we got sin coming into the world by one man. I always had trouble with that because I thought Eve brought it in, but Eve, she was deceived. The man, he just took it, and I don't know if that was the reason or not, but he puts the blame on the man bringing sin into the world. So anyway, so we have Christ, though. He comes into the world, and he's going to take away this curse. He's going to take away the stigma of and the fear of death, in that we're going to be able to live with him. And he says, when at Lazarus' grave there, he asked Mary, he says, do you believe basically, do you believe in the resurrection? And he says, yeah, I believe there'll be a resurrection, at the end of time. But Jesus said, I am the resurrection. And so he that believes in me, even though he's dead, he's going to live. So if we have our faith in the Lord, and we have done if we're faithful and we're obedient, then we're going to be in good shape and the fear, it goes away if you know that you have a place with him and you're not going to be touched by the second death, and we're in good shape. Well, let's see here. It says in chapter 6, he talks about how we get there. He says, what shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin and grace may abound? By no means. How can we who died to sin still live in it? And then he explains that Christ died, and we that have sinned, we're basically already dead if we've sinned, and we're separated from God, just like God told Adam, the day you eat of this, you're going to die. Well, they ate of it. The death was that they were separated from God, but they also were going to die, and God told him, dust you are, and dust you're going to return. But here he says, so they're dead. We were dead. Do you not know that all of us who have been baptized into Christ were baptized into his death? We were buried therefore with him by baptism into death, in order that just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, we too shall walk in newness of life. So when we're baptized, we're buried. It's a symbolic thing. It's a burying. You're raised up, and it says raised up to life, and you're buried like Christ. And so he's assuming that all these, he's talking to these guys like all of these people have done it. So what, he says, for if we have been united with him in death like his, we shall certainly be united with him in his resurrection. Okay, so we know that our old self was crucified with him in order that the body of sin might be brought to nothing, so that we should no longer be enslaved to sin. All right, so here he is. Christ died for us. We reenact that. And we are buried with him, and then we arise a new man. You're dead before, you're alive after. And then, you know, the sins are covered. He takes the sins away by his sacrifice, taking them on himself. It's such a big deal. And it's such a, you know, it takes the fear of death away, that Christ, he paid for all those bad things you did. He's there. We have a place to come, a place to go where there won't be any goodbyes. It's going to be a joyful thing. And as you get older, you start thinking more about this kind of stuff. So it's good to share it with you. And you know, we have just a tremendous hope, and we're all in this together. We're all striving to please the Lord. You know, he taught us how to love one another. He taught us how to, you know, to live, and we got the Bible to give us the instructions that he has. So as we carry on, as we get another day older tomorrow, those will add up, and pretty soon you'll be as old as I am. I mean, you know, nobody's guaranteed that they're going to live a long time, but you can see that we're just like God told Adam, dust you are and dust you're going to return. And I forgot one thing. I wanted to read in Ecclesiastes. Let me do that before I quit. In Ecclesiastes 12, it's the very end of the chapter there. Solomon, he talks about old age, and I thought I'd read that because it's kind of interesting. Here he is, chapter 12, verse 1. Remember also your Creator, and he's talking to the youth, the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light of the moon and the stars are darkened, and the clouds return after the rain. So the light, you can't see it that good because you're getting cataracts. In the day when the keepers of the house tremble, you get the shakes because you get the senile tremor here. And the strong men are bent, you start walking all bent over. And the grinders cease because they are few. So you start losing your teeth and you're not able to chew your food. And those who look through the windows are dim, so you can't see. Usually, often that's from cataract. And the doors of the street are shut. When the sound of the grinding is low, and the one rises up the sound of a bird. So, you can't sleep good. You hear something, you wake up. And all the daughters of song are brought low. You can't hear singing. They are afraid also of what is high. You don't want to get up on any ladders anymore. And the terrors are in the way of the almond tree blossom, and the grasshopper drags itself along, and the desire fails because man is going to his eternal home. And the mourners go about the streets before the silver cord is snapped, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher is shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. And this is the story of our life. Anyway, but there's such hope, and there's such blessing, and there's forgiveness, and God loved us, and He's provided for us to be with Him, free of the bonds of sin, and the curse will be lifted, and it's just a good thing. And if you haven't participated in this kind of thing and you want to, take this opportunity. And if anybody just wants prayers, Judy wanted some prayers, so we're going to pray for her after the closing prayer here. But if anybody else needs prayers, we can do that too. All right, thanks.